Hello student, welcome to EPG Pathsala. I am Dr. Ajit Jaiswal from Department of Anthropology, Pondicherry Central University, Puducherry. Today we are going to discuss about a modules called as Biological Human Ecology under paper Physical or Biological Anthropology. The important objectives or learning objective of these modules are to understand about the potential ecological stressor that affect human being and how human being by the process of their inbuilt biological mechanism or by adopting some cultural practices make an effort to minimize the effect of stress on their body. Let me give you introductory information about this. Evolutionary selection process play an important role for all living organisms to survive in a particular ecology. Because of this evolutionary selection process, human groups across the world have developed some unique characteristic features that help them to survive in situations of ecological stress. Biological human ecology seek to understand how natural and cultural environment affected the biological characteristics of human population. Every individual with its own complex set of neurological, physiological and behavioral mechanisms reduce strain or enhance the endurance of strain tolerance in order to maintain their normal body functioning or homeostasis within a viable limit. This phenomena is defined as acclimatization. Although the coping strategy of all the members of a species would be similar, yet the concept that all population within a species would respond in the same way was challenged. Thus, there exists intra-group and intergroup variability in understanding ecological stress. How? Now the important question arises, how adaptation is different from acclimatization? One should not confuse acclimatization with adaptation. Adaptation is genetically fixed condition of a species or subspecies or of a specific group of organisms which favor survival in a particular environment. But acclimatization is a temporary biological response to environmental stress, and the response is withdrawn once the stress is removed. What do we mean by ecological stress? Now the question arises, what are stressors? Stressors are conditions that threaten to disturb normal biological function or homeostasis. Heat, cold, hypoxia, disease and malnutrition are some of the potential ecological stressors that disturb homeostasis or increase the strain on human being. So stressors are actually conditions that threaten to disturb normal biological function or hormones, and as we have already told you that there are number of stressors like heat, cold condition, hypoxia condition, disease and malnutrition. These are the some of the potential ecological stressors and that disturb the homeostasis or increases the strain on human being. Humans' response to ecological stressors, especially heat and cold stress. Our body is divided into two parts. First one, the core, that is inside which all the vital organs are present and work. And the second is the periphery or the cell or the extremes like hand and feet. The main heat reserve and the production site because of the metabolic activities of our body is the core. The core body temperature is 98.6 degree Fahrenheit, that is 37 degree centigrade. But this core body temperature varies between an acceptable range, that is from 85 degree Fahrenheit or 29.4 degree centigrade and 105 degree Fahrenheit or 40.6 degree centigrade. However, the rise and fall of core body temperature beyond this acceptable limit disturb the balance or homeostasis of the body. If the core body temperature falls below 85 degree Fahrenheit or 29.4 degree centigrade, an individual suffer from hypothermia, and if it is goes beyond 105 degree Fahrenheit or 40.6 degree centigrade, an individual suffer from hyperthermia. The heat produced in the core is transmitted throughout the body. On the other hand, the temperature of the periphery or cell is strongly influenced by the environment and is not regulated within narrow limits like in the core. When we discuss about heat transfer in the body, although heat is produced inside the body, it is lost only through the tissue which are in contact with the external environment, that is mostly through skin. Within the body, heat is transported by two means, that is conducting through tissue and convection through blood. Heat flow by conduction is proportional to the thermal conductivity of the tissue, like muscle and adipose tissue. The change of temperature with distance in the direction of the heat flow and the area through which the heat flows. Heat flow by convection depend on the rate of blood flow and the temperature differences between the tissue and the blood supplying the tissue. Here, blood capillaries have a major role to play. The blood capillaries have thin wall and together they form capillary bed across a large surface area in various tissue. The heat is exchanged through the thin walls of the capillaries between the tissue and the blood. When the homeostasis of our body gets disturbed during an endogenous heat stress or cold stress, when the ambient temperature remains below the skin temperature, this heat flux may be enhanced by convection heat exchange between circulatory blood and adjacent tissues, with the circulatory blood carrying the warmth from the central core to the peripheral tissue. During period of exogenous heat stress or heat stress, when ambient temperature surpasses skin temperature, the rate of sweating and the ability to move heat from the core to the skin surface to facilitate evaporative heat loss. Both heat and cold stress disturb the homeostasis of the body. When we discuss about the cold stress, Homo sapiens sapiens is a tropical species and thus their tolerance to cold stress is low. If you carefully follow the record, you will observe that in India the number of that take place during cold season is higher than the hot season. A lesser extreme condition that may develop out of cold stress is and numbness and loss of mental alertness. When the ambient temperature falls much below the normal, the skin loses heat because of the development of thermal gradient. Under this condition, our body tries to put a check of this heat loss by restricting the flow of blood to the skin. This physiological response of the body to cold is called vasoconstriction. In the process, the lumen of the blood vessels becomes narrow because of the contraction of the muscular wall of the blood vessel. In response to the fall of ambient temperature, the decrease in size of the lumen of blood vessel reduces the flow of the blood to the skin and hence heat loss from the body is reduced. However, prolonged absence of blood flow to the skin may affect energy and oxygen supply to the tissue and may contribute to the etiology of cold injury and in extreme situation may lead to frostbite. Here another physiological response to cold, that is cold induced vasodilation CIVD modulates the effect of vasoconstriction. The response is termed as Hunting reaction or Lewis wave. Let me give an example. If we put our fingertip in the cold water, we get a chilling sensation for some time and later numbness develop at that region because of the vasoconstriction. After some time, we regain sense in the finger because of the effect of CIVD. This suggests that a periodic oscillation of skin temperature follows the initial decline in skin temperature during prolonged cold exposure. But the time interval of this periodic switching over from vasoconstriction to vasodilation varies widely. For example, people who are habitual to these situations experience a less time interval compared to those who are not exposed to this situation regularly. Say for example, if you dip the finger in a container filled with ice cube, then initially you will feel a chilling sensation. This chilling sensation will subside after some time and your finger will become numb. Gradually you will regain sense in your finger. Shivering thermogenesis is another way by which human population respond to cold stress. Shivering is an involuntary pattern of repetitive rhythmic muscle contraction. This is often referred to as a quasi-exercising state since the muscle contract but do no external work. Shivering increases whole body oxygen uptake and thereby increasing the cardiac output. Since shivering is a muscular activity, metabolic activity increases and thereby more energy produced. The tolerance level to cold depend on various factors: individuals' familiarities with cold exposure, age, physical fitness, type of body armor, intensity of wind speed, and duration of exposure. A lean individual having a larger surface area to body mass is more likely to suffer from cold stress since heat loss from the body surface will be of higher degree. Young adults will be more tolerant to cold because of their ability to generate adequate heat through physical activity. Again, adult women generally having shorter extremities and greater body weight compared to men are more tolerant to cold stress. Greater body mass to body surface area means more heat production and greater average subcutaneous fat deposition, and thereby heat is restored. Wind speed expedites the heat loss from the body and thereby reduce the heat tolerance. Behavioral response such as taking shelter from the cold and wearing adequate protective clothing can greatly reduce the physiological strain of cold exposure and obviate the need for nutritional intervention. When we discuss about heat stress, similarly during heat stress, when the external or ambient temperature becomes higher than the peripheral or skin temperature, the heat load on the individual rises. Extreme heat stress may lead to fatal heat stroke. In response to this stress, the lumen of the blood vessel becomes widened in order to allow more blood to follow through it. That is, cardiac output increases, and thus more heat is released from the core of the environment, that is via the cell or periphery. This physiological response is called vasodilation. Since vasodilation increases the pressure on the blood down the vessel, cardiovascular stress also increases. If the heat load remains high, sweating through eccrine gland begins, which release the further heat from the body. Evaporation of 1 liter of sweat takes about 580 kilocalorie of heat, and human can sweat up to 4 liters an hour at the extreme. but the rate of sweating depends on the number of sweat glands that are active. Studies shows that the people who live in high and heat load regions have more number of active sweat glands than their counterpart. However, sweating doesn't remain as an effective cooling mechanism if the water vapor content in the atmosphere is high. High altitude stress. High altitude environment is signified by decrease in air pressure, decrease in water vapor pressure, and increase in radiant energy penetration. Out of these three, decrease in air pressure is crucial for human population. Now let us try to understand with an example how the air pressure decreases with the increase in altitude. Pile up books on one above the other, place your palm below the topmost book and observe the pressure you are experiencing. Similarly, place your palm below the last book from the top and experience the pressure. I am sure the pressure will not be the same. The pressure in the latter case will be higher. Similarly, air in the atmosphere appears to be like layer. Thus, at the sea level, the pressure of the air will be the highest and will gradually decrease as you move above the sea level, that is towards higher altitude. The decrease in air pressure at high altitude also signifies a decrease in oxygen pressure. Since oxygen is a component in the air, breathing is a mechanical process. In this process, we voluntarily develop a low pressure inside the chest cavity by expanding the chest. In the way a pressure gradient develops between the atmosphere, that is high pressure, and the chest cavity, low pressure, and air gust inside the lung. Now, if the air pressure in the atmosphere remains low, less amount of air can enter inside the lung and thereby less intake of energy. This phenomena is known as hypoxia. We all know that the red blood corpuscles RBCs of our body contain hemoglobin, which bind the oxygen that enter with the air inside the lung. At sea level, the oxygen content of the inhaled air is high and hemoglobin becomes 97% saturated with oxygen. But with increase in altitude level, that is around 4000 meter above the sea level, the oxygen pressure decreases and so also the saturation level of the hemoglobin decreases. An individual freshly exposed to high altitude will experience a low level of oxygen intake and will respond to this stress by increasing the breathing and heartbeat rate in order to maintain comfortable supply of oxygen to the body. This condition led to certain health problems to the newcomers of high altitude like fatigue, nausea, increase in breathing and heartbeat rates, difficulty in sleeping, a reduce in aerobic capacity. It has been found that their aerobic capacity is lost by 20 to 30% compared to their capacity at sea level. However, aerobic capacity is restored once they return to their native place, that is low altitude. The native of high altitude probably managed to cope with this stress by increasing the count of their RBC, which in turn increases the oxygen saturation level of hemoglobin. But their work capacity is not improved if they, that is native high altitude dwellers, go down to low altitude. Now let's discuss about the nutritional stress. Nutritional stress occur when people fail to fulfill their nutritional requirement. This may be caused by either non-availability of particular nutrient in an ecological setup and also by unbalanced energy flow. Nutrition represents a critical interface between biology, culture and the environment. It has been argued that the increasing ability of our species to control and utilize energy was the key to understanding cultural development over the history and prehistory of cultural changes. Pattern of nutritional and metabolic variations among human population provide additional insight into the influence of environmental and cultural factor on evolution of nutrition in our species. A comparative study of nutrition. A comparative analysis of dietary practices between two contemporary human groups, that is the Inuits who are solely hunters and Kungsan who are hunters and gatherers, will help you to understand this thesis. Inuits' diet is largely dependent on meat or other animal body parts like liver. Since their habitat, that is Arctic regions, is not conducive for faunal resource. On the other hand, Kungsan group live in the jungles of South Africa with plant and animal dietary resources in abundance. Their dietary practice is more dependent on diversified plant product rather than meat. It has been observed that the Inuits probably have a lower life expectancy and face more problems related to mastication compared to their South African counterpart because of excessive dependence on meat diet. We all know that carbohydrate, protein and fat are the major source of nutrient in our body. Apart from this, vitamins and minerals also act as a nutrient for our body. Carbohydrate is the principal source of energy for our body. Although fat produces more energy than carbohydrate, yet it is less consumed by the people compared to carbohydrate because of difficulty in digestion. However, there are regions in the earth like the Arctic where people consume animal fat more than carbohydrate for energy because of the easy availability of the former. Again, if we look at some Polynesian communities, we will see that fat is the major source of energy and it is derived from coconut. This demonstrates that people derive their nutrient for their body from the available sources in that ecology. Protein is an important nutrient and is essential for formation of all amino acids present in our product. But there are people who do not consume animal protein because of their cultural reason or dislike. Thus, these peoples are totally dependent on plant to obtain protein. It has been found that plants cannot supply varieties of amino acids like the animal product. An inappropriate intake of these three nutrients causes certain disorder among the human population. Like marasmus and kwashiorkor are the two advanced forms of protein calorie malnutrition. They are not two different diseases with different dietary etiology but two facets of the same disease. It is suggested that marasmus, characterized by severe growth retardation but remarkably well preserved metabolic processes, represent a state of good adaptation to the stress of protein calorie malnutrition. The representation of this nutritional disorder comes from the countries like India, Africa, Southeast Asia, Caribbean and Mexico. The common symptoms of this disorder are changes in skin pigmentation, decreased muscle mass, fatigue, large belly that stick out and swelling. Let me give some example of other nutritional stress experienced by the people of the world. That water is a nutrient which acts as a medium of transport and regulates the concentration of urine. In hot humid climate, water is used up in the form of sweating as a mechanism of releasing body heat. Again, in desert areas, shortage of water in the environment leads to fewer intakes. In both the situation, insufficient retention of water in the body increases the chances of calculi, that is kidney stone formation. Similarly, our body has a high level of salinity, and this is critical for many physiological functions. There are also people in this world, that is Highland, South American and Mesoamerican Indians, who lack calcium in their diet. Similarly, there are communities who consume leafy vegetables, meat and iron rich organs of animal, that is heart and spleen, to supplement iron deficiency. The importance of vitamins also as a nutrient and its supplementations through specific diet was understood during the first half of the 20th century. For example, people who take polished rice are likely to be affected with thiamine deficiency, as the rice husks contain thiamine. Raw fish contain anti-thiamine compound called thiaminase. Thus, the practice of consuming raw fish may lead to thiamine deficiency. However, cooking of fish put an end to the action of anti-thiamine substances and improves thiamine absorption. Now let's discuss about the infectious diseases. Infectious diseases are also called as communicable diseases and are spread from one individual to another through some pathogens. Pathogens are organisms that cause infectious diseases like malaria, diarrhea, AIDS, TB, or tuberculosis, and chickenpox. Pathogens may be micro, that is bacteria, protozoans and virus, or macro, like helminths in nature. The time period between infection and development of symptom is called as incubant period, and it varies with the infection time of the pathogen. The length of time between infection and the ability to infect somebody else is called latent period. Infectious diseases are a major cause of human mortality, especially for the tropical countries. In fact, the tropical environment is conducive for the growth and survival of pathogens. The regions are as follows, that is, tropical regions has a hot and humid climate. It often tremendous flora and faunal biodiversity and has high human population density. Human beings are especially warmth loving, and if you look at the evolutionary discourse, you will find their distribution mostly in the tropical regions rather than in the temperate. The two most popular continent of the world that come under these regions are Asia and Africa. High population density of these two regions leads to the spatial expansion of human settlement and thereby more exploitations of natural resources. For example, large scale availability of different resources of forest took place at the cost of secured food supply, and expansion of human base started with the introduction of agriculture in the society. This affected the biodiversity of this region. The pathogen that used to survive on the nutrient of plant and animals are quickly shifting their host and finding human as substitute. In this way, diseases which were once believed to have affected non-humans are now becoming human specific. The unicellular pathogens, with their single cell structure ability to modify their genotype and multiply fast, are quickly adopted in the body of the new host, that is human. In the process, human beings are becoming victim to emerging diseases resulting from new mutation and are causing more severe stress compared to the existing one. With the development of technology, people from the old world started moving to the new world, that is North and South America and the Pacific Island. In this way, the aborigines of the new world becomes became victim to some new type of infectious diseases like smallpox, measles and influenza that are typical to the old world. One may find this to be one of the reasons of a dwindling number of aborigines from the New World. There are two kinds of immune response to infectious diseases: antibody mediated and cell mediated. The antibody are protein that appear in serum following exposure to antigen, that is foreign substances. Repeated exposure to the same antigen elevates the immune response or the level of that antigen specific antibody. The second kind of immune response is cell mediated. If a foreign body enter in a cell, the infected cell is destroyed by special killer cell like lymphocytes and neutrophils through cell mediated immunity. However, human immune system exhibit a complex set of response to infectious agent that varies with differential biological plasticity. As a result, some of us are more susceptible to certain infections than others. Again, within human population, stress caused by a particular infectious disease is not uniform. Communities that get frequently exposed to a disease or have a historic episode of exposure to a disease are likely to develop an immune system in their body. The immunological adaptation causes less stress to its member than the ones who are newly exposed. Travelers are recommended to protect from illness present in another part of the world and to prevent the importance of infectious diseases across the international border. While vaccinations you need depends on a number of factors including your destinations, whether you will be spending time in rural areas, the season of year you are traveling, your age, health status and previous immunizations. For example, there are some recommended vaccine for travelers for travel to India. One such is anti-malarial vaccine. The Indian do not administer this vaccine since the disease is endemic. An interesting and interacting complex between disease vectors and its host should work together for their co-evolution. Let's try to give you important points in the form of summary related to this module. Ecological stress and how these stressors disturb homeostasis. Human population with their biological plasticity and also by adaptation of some cultural practices tries to minimize this cultural stress or increase their strain tolerance. We all know that our body morphology is important in maintaining heat balance. Even the condition called hypoxia is the major stress related to high altitude and people respond differently to this situation. The nutrition related stress is expressed by people all over the world. This type of stress may occur because of the non-availability of macro or micronutrient in the ecology or unbalanced energy flow. It is interesting to learn how different groups cope with these various types of nutritional stress with their cultural practices. We also try to learn human activity and inactivities are responsible for the spread of infectious disease in human population, but the differential immunological response in human body makes some people more susceptible to infectious disease than others. In anthropology, it is important to studying the variation in the response level to different ecological stressors. Thank you.